Okay, okay. The trivia question asked about a woman hoaxing doctors about giving birth to rabbits. Well, that just tells you all sorts of what kind of stream this is. Now, I've got the desktop audio thing turned on, so I don't know if it's just how you guys are hearing it or if everyone else is hearing it. I don't know. I'm following the instructions that SoundAlerts posted, so if it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, let me know. I also have OBS open, taking up the full screen, so I can't see my Twitch windows. So, and I had to mute everything else on the computer because I don't want the rest of the desktop audio popping up for you guys. As you guys don't really need to know every time I get a Discord alert or anything like that. The downside is... Hey, Guilty! Welcome in. I don't know if the sound alerts are working. I've been trying to get them working for the past couple of hours. And I followed their instructions, so give them a try, I guess. Let's see. Of course, I also tried to fix some of my other redeems. Let's see, will blurb work?
That escalated quickly.
Well, that was loud. Also, it looked like it gave the alert number on there twice. Oh, I do have two different blurb ones open. Okay, fix that. I should only have one blurb. Not showing on my desktop audio, so I don't know if it's playing or if I'm just hearing it. Did that work? I don't know. All I see is it from my end, so I don't know if it's going out or not. Desktop audio says it went out, so according to SoundAlerts instructions, it should be going out, right? Just because I added it today. I'm weird. Haha! I have a top hat. Da, 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 da. Oh, my model stopped moving. Let's see, it should only be on a few more seconds. I think I set the top hat to 15 seconds. I don't remember. Maybe. Don't know. Anyway. Finishing up the Green Fairy book tonight. And I did not get enough donations to buy myself absinthe, so I will be absinthe. It's only 9:06. My top hat hasn't gone away yet. It's weird. But it carried over, so. Let's see. Oh, there goes the top hat. Oh, I had it set for 60 seconds, so I got the top hat for a full minute. Oh, that's good to remember. And let's see if my chibi works. Oh, I hit scritches, not chibi. Silly me. I need to be a chibi before I can get to chibi scritches. I'm small. Let's see. Huh. Chibi topper. Haha. Okay, this one works. And I think I set it so I can get your scritches while I've got the top hat on.
Where are you? We got some work to do now.
Did you hear it playing? Ah, good. Yay, stuff works. Ah! Dang it. You're supposed to be on my ear. Okay. Anyway, oh, it's back. And it's still not in the right place. Get on the ear. Thank you. Just gonna do it again. Nope, just twice. Okay. Anyway, green fairy. What? An arbok has appeared. I don't know if I got an arbok. Why is my model frozen again? I'm just very limited. Okay, well, at least I'm here. And hydrate. That I can do because I do have a water bottle. So sound alerts are working, blurp is working. I guess the TTS might be working as well, but I don't know. Hey, Joe. Thank you. I'm small. Do shots. What? Well, that was weird. Yay, the shout out worked. Ooh, Cards Against Humanity collab. That could be fun. Okay. Let's see. Which story am I on in the Green Fairy book? I am up to... Oh! The War of the Wolf and the Fox. Because of course. Let's see. That means I've got 4 stories left. So we will definitely be finishing this book tonight. And again, me with no absinthe. Oh well. So it is 9:11, so we should probably get into the stories. I really do want to finish this book tonight. And then I'll just start a brand new fairy book next week. How long are we going to be small? I don't have the small for about 5 minutes. Oop, I've only got a few seconds left. And I'm still small. Much better. And I'm sending... What? Oh, Cole's dropping stuff at me again. Okay. Back in the chair. Thank you. Gonna have to figure out the placement setting on that kind of thing. Anyway. Our first fairy tale for this fabulous Friday night. Like I said earlier, The War of the Wolf and the Fox. There was once upon a time a man and his wife who had an old cat and an old dog. One day the man, whose name was Simon, said to his wife, whose name was Susan, "Why should we keep our old cat any longer? She never catches any mice nowadays, and is so useless that I have made up my mind to drown her." But his wife replied, "Don't do that, for I'm sure she could still catch mice." "Rubbish," said Simon. "The mice might dance on her and she would never catch one. I've quite made up my mind that the next time I see her, I shall put her in the water." Susan was very unhappy when she heard this. Imagine that. And so was the cat, who had been listening to the conversation from behind the stove. When Simon went off to his work, the cat mewed so pitifully and looked up so pathetically into Susan's face that the woman quickly opened the door and said, "Fly for your life, my poor little beast, and get well away from here before your master returns." The cat took her advice and ran quickly as her old poor legs could carry her into the woods. And when Simon came home, the wife told him that the cat had vanished. "So much the better for her," said Simon. "And now we've got rid of her, we must consider what we are going to do with the old dog. He is quite deaf and blind, and invariably barks when there is no need, and makes no sound when there is. I think the best thing I can do for him is to hang him." I do not like Simon. But soft-hearted Susan replied, "Please don't do so. He's surely not so useless as all that." "Don't be foolish," said her husband. "The courtyard might be full of thieves, and he'd never discover it. No, the first time I see him, it's all up with him, and I can tell you that." Susan was very unhappy with her words, and so was the dog, who was lying in the corner of the room and heard everything. As soon as Simon had gone to his work, he stood up and howled so touchingly that Susan quickly opened the door and said, "Fly for your life, poor beast, before your master gets home." And the dog ran into the wood with his tail between his legs. When her husband returned, his wife told him that the dog had disappeared. "Well, that's lucky for him," said Simon. But Susan sighed, for she had been very fond of the poor old creature. Now it happened that the cat and the dog met each other in the woods in their travels, and although they had not really been the best of friends at home, they were quite glad to meet among so many strangers. They sat down under a holly tree and both poured forth their woes. Presently a fox came by, and seeing the pair sitting together with a disconsolate fashion, he asked them why they were there, and that they were grumbling about. The cat replied, "I've caught many a mouse in my day, but now that I am old and past work, my master wants to drown me." And the dog said, "Many a night I have watched and guarded my master's house, and now that I'm old and deaf, he wants to hang me." The fox answered, "Well, that's the way of the world. I'll help you get back into your master's favor, but you must first help me with my own troubles." They promised to do their best, and the fox continued, "The wolf has declared war against me, and is at this moment marching to meet me in company with a bear and a wild boar, and tomorrow there will be a fierce battle between us." "All right," said the dog and the cat. "We will stand by you, and if we are killed, it is at any rate better to die in the field of battle than to perish ignobly at home." And they shook paws and concluded the bargain. The fox sent word to the wolf to meet him at a certain place, and the three set forth to encounter him and his friends. The wolf, the bear, and the wild boar arrived on the spot first, and when they had waited for some time for the fox, the dog, and the cat, the bear said, "I'll climb up into the oak tree and look around to see if I can see them coming." The first time he looked around, he said, "I see nothing." And the second time he looked around, he said, "I can still see nothing." But the third time he said, "I see a mighty army in the distance, and one of the warriors has the biggest lance I've ever seen." This was the cat who was marching along, with her tail erect. So they laughed and jeered, and it was so hot, the bear said, "The enemy won't be here at this rate for many hours to come. I could just curl myself up in the fork of the tree and have a little sleep." And the wolf lay down under the oak, and the wild boar buried himself in some straw so that nothing was seen of him but one ear. And while they were laying there, the fox, the cat, and the dog arrived. When the cat saw the wild boar's ear, she pounced upon it, thinking it was a mouse in the straw. The wild boar got up in a dreadful fright and gave one loud grunt and disappeared into the wood. But the cat was even more startled than the boar, and spitting in terror, she scrambled up into the fork of the tree, as it happened right into the bear's face. Now it was the bear's turn to be alarmed, and with a mighty growl he jumped down from the oak and fell right on top of the wolf and killed him as dead as a stone. Bears are heavy. On the way home from the war, the fox caught scores of mice, and when they reached Simon's cottage, he put them all on the stove and said to the cat, "Now go and fetch one mouse after the other and lay them down before your master." "All right," said the cat, and she did exactly as the fox told her. When Susan saw this, she said to her husband, "Just look, here's our wildcat back again, and see what a lot of mice she has caught." "Wonders will never cease," cried Simon. "I certainly never thought the old cat would ever catch another mouse." But Susan answered, There, you see, I always said our cat was the most excellent creature, but you men always think you know best. In the meantime, the fox said to the dog, Our friend Simon has just killed a pig. When it gets a little darker, you must go into the courtyard and bark with all your might. All right, said the dog, and as soon as it grew dark, he began to bark loudly. Susan, who heard him first, said to her husband, Our dog must have come back, for I hear him barking lustily. Do go out and see what's the matter. Perhaps thieves may be stealing our sausages. But Simon answered, The foolish brute is as deaf as a post and is always barking at nothing. And he refused to get up. The next morning, Susan got up early to go to church at the neighboring town, and she thought she would take some of the sausages to her aunt who lived there. But when she got into the larder, she found all the sausages gone, and a great hole in the floor. She called out her husband, I was perfectly right. Thieves have been here last night, and they have not left a single sausage. Oh, if only you had got up when I asked you to. Then Simon scratched his head and said, I can't understand it at all. I certainly never believed the old dog was so quick at hearing. But Susan replied, I always told you our old dog was the best dog in the world. But as usual you thought you knew much better. Men are the same all over the world. And the fox scored a point too, for he had carried off all the sausages. Oh my goodness, men just won't listen! So did you hear the spooky whispers when they were playing? Because I sure the hell did. One of these times I'm going to try to pay attention and listen to what they're saying, because I was trying to get at some of it. Ooh, a puccina. Puccina. Haha, my hat. Anyway. Continuing. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. As much as the woman was nagging about the husband in the previous story, this one's going to be even worse. Because our next story is the story of the fisherman and his wife. There was once a fisherman and his wife who lived together in a little hut close to the sea. And the fisherman used to go out every day to fish. And he would fish and fish. So he used to sit with his rod and gaze shining into the water. And he would gaze and he would gaze. Now, once the line was pulled deep under the water, and when he hauled it up, he hauled a large flounder with it. The flounder said to him, Listen, fisherman, I pray you to let me go. I'm not a real flounder. I'm an enchanted prince. What good will it do if you were to kill me? I shall not taste nice. Put me back into the water and let me swim away. Oh, said the man, you need not make much noise about it. I'm sure I had better let a flounder that can talk swim away. With these words, he put him back into the shining water, and the flounder sank to the bottom, leaving a long streak of blood behind. Then the fisherman got up and went home to his wife in the hut. "Husband," said his wife, "have you caught nothing today?" "No," said the man. "I caught a flounder who said he was an enchanted prince, so I let him swim away again." "Did you wish nothing from him?" said his wife. "No," said the man. "What should I have wished from him?" "Ah," said the woman, "it's dreadful to have to live all one's life in this hut that is so small and dirty. You ought to have wished for a cottage. Now go and call him, and say to him that we choose to have a cottage, and he will certainly give it to you." "Alas," said the man, "why should I go down there again?" "Why," said his wife, "you caught him and you let him go again. He is sure to give you what you ask. Go down quickly." The man did not like going at all, but his wife was not to be persuaded, so he went down to the sea. When he came there, the sea was quite green and yellow, and was no longer shining as it had before. He stood on the shore, and he called out, "Once a prince, but changed you be into a flounder in the sea. Come, for my wife Isabel wishes that I dare not tell." Then the flounder came swimming up and said, "Well, what does she want?" "Alas," said the man, "my wife says I ought to have kept you and wished for something from you. She does not want to live any longer in a hut. She would like a cottage." "Oh, then," said the flounder, "she has it." So the man went home, and there was his wife no longer in the hut, but in its place was a beautiful cottage, and the wife was sitting in front of the door on a bench. She took him by the hand and said to him, "Come inside and see, this is not much better." They went in, and the cottage was a tiny hall, but had a beautiful sitting room and a bedroom which stood a nice bed and a kitchen and dining room, all furnished with the best of everything, fitted up with every kind of tin and copper utensil. And outside was a little yard where there were chickens and ducks, and also a little garden with vegetables and fruit trees. "See," said the wife, "isn't this nice?" "Well, yes," answered the husband. "Here we shall remain and live very happily." "We will think about that," said his wife. With these words, they had their supper and went to bed. All went well for a week and even a fortnight. Then the wife said, "Listen, husband, the cottage is much too small, and so is the yard and the garden. The flounder might just as well have sent us a larger house. I should like to live in a great stone castle. Go down to the flounder and tell him to send us a castle." "Wife," said the fisherman, "the cottage is quite good enough. Why do we choose to live in a castle?" "Why?" said the wife. "You go down, the flounder can do quite as well as that." "No, wife," said the guard. "The flounder gave us this cottage. I do not like to go to him again. He might take it amiss." "Go," said his wife. "He can certainly give it to us, and ought to be willing so. Go at once." The fisherman's heart was very heavy, and he did not like going. He said to himself, "It is not right." Still, he went down. When he came to the sea, the water was all violet and dark blue, dull and thick, and no longer green and yellow, but it was still smooth. He stood there and said, "Once a prince be changed you be into a flounder in the sea. Come, for my wife Isabel wishes what I dared not tell." "What does she want now?" said the flounder. Oh, said the fisherman, half ashamed. She wants to live in a great stone castle. Go home. She is standing before the door, said the flounder. The fisherman went home and thought he would find no house at all. When he came near, there stood a great stone palace, and his wife was standing on the steps, about to enter. She took him by the hand and said, "Come inside!" Then he went with her, and inside the castle was a large hall with a marble floor. And there were heaps of servants who threw open the great doors, and the walls were covered with beautiful tapestry, and in the apartments were gilded chairs and tables, and crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and all the rooms were beautifully carpeted. The best food and drink was set before them when they wished to dine. The outside of the house was a large courtyard with a horse and cow stables and a coach house. All fine buildings with a splendid garden with the most beautiful flowers and fruit, and in a park quite a league long were deer and roe and hares and everything one could wish for. "Now," said the wife, "isn't this beautiful?" "Yes, indeed," said the fisherman. "Now we will stay here and live in this beautiful castle and be happy, always." "We will consider the matter," said his wife, and they went to bed. The next morning the wife woke up first at daybreak, and looked out at the bed at all the beautiful country stretched before her. Her husband was still sleeping, so she dug her elbows into his side and said, "Husband, get up and look out at the window. Could we not become the king of all this land? Go down to the flounder and tell him we choose to be the king." "Wife," replied her husband, "why should we be king? I don't want to be king." "Well," said his wife, "if you don't want to be king, I will be king. Go down and talk to the flounder. I will be king." "Alas, wife," said the fisherman, "why do you want to be king? I can't ask him that." "And why not?" said his wife. "Go down at once. I must be king." So the fisherman went, though much vexed at his wife for wanting to be king. "It's not right. It's just not right," he thought. He did not wish to go, yet he went. When he came to the sea, the water was a dark gray color, and it was heaving against the storm. So he stood and said, "Oh, prince, but change you be into a flounder in the sea. Come, for my wife Isabel wishes what I dare not tell." "What does she want now?" asked the flounder. Alas," said the fisherman, "she wants to be king." "Go home. She's already that," said the flounder. The man went home, and when he came near the palace, he saw that it had become much larger, and that it had great towers and splendid ornamental carving on it. A sentinel was standing before the gate, and there were a number of soldiers with kettle drums and trumpets. And when he went into the palace, he found everything was as pure marble and gold, and the curtains of damask with tassels of gold. Then the doors of the hall flew open, and there stood the whole court around his wife, who was sitting in a high throne of gold and diamonds. She wore a golden crown and had a scepter of gold and precious stones in her hand. And by her on either side stood 6 pages in a row, each one a head taller than the other. Then he went before her and said, Wife, are you king now? Yes, said his wife. Now I am king. He stood looking at her, and when he had looked at her some time, he said, Let that be enough, wife, now that you're a king. Now we have nothing more to wish for. Nay, husband, she said restlessly. My wishing powers are boundless. I cannot restrain them any longer. Go down to the flounder. King I am. Now I must be emperor. Alas, wife, said the fisherman, why do you want to be emperor? Husband, she said, go to the flounder. I will be emperor. Wife, he said, he cannot make you emperor. I don't like to ask him that. There's only one emperor in the kingdom. Indeed, and indeed he cannot make you emperor. What? Said his wife. I am king and you are my husband. You will go at once. Go. If he can make me king, he can make me emperor. An emperor I must be and will be. Go. So he had to go, but as he went, he felt quite frightened, and he thought to himself, this can't be right. To be emperor is too ambitious. The flounder will be tired out at last. Thinking this, when he came to the shore, the sea was quite black and thick, and it was breaking high on the beach. The foam was flying about, and the wind was blowing. Everything looked bleak. The fisherman was chilled with fear. He stood and said, Once a prince, but changed you be into a flounder in the sea. Come, for my wife Isabel wishes what I dare not tell. What does she want now? Asked the flounder. Alas, flounder, he said, my wife wants to be the emperor. Go home, said the flounder. She's that already. So the fisherman went home, and when he came home, he saw the whole castle was made of polished marble, ornamented with alabaster statues in gold. Before the gate, soldiers were marching, blowing trumpets and beating drums. Inside the palace were walking barons, counts, and dukes, acting as servants. His wife upon the throne, which was made out of a single block of gold, and which was 6 cubits high. She had on a great golden crown, which was 3 yards high, and set with brilliant and sparkling gems. In one hand she held a scepter, and in the other the imperial globe. On either side of her stood 2 rows of halberders, each smaller than the other, from a 7-foot giant to a tiny little dwarf no higher than my little finger. Many princes and dukes were standing before her. The fisherman went up to her quietly and said, Wife, are you emperor now? Yes, she said. I am emperor. He stood looking at her magnificence, and when he had watched her for some time, he said, Wife, let that be enough. Now you're the emperor. Husband, she said, why are you standing there? I am emperor now, and I want to be pope. Do go down to the flounder. Alas, wife, said the fisherman, what more do you want? You cannot be pope. There's only one pope in Christendom, and he cannot make you that. Husband, she said, I will be Pope. Go down quickly. I must be Pope today. No, wife, said the fisherman. I can't ask him that. It's not right. It's too much. The flounder cannot make you Pope. Husband, is that nonsense? Said his wife. If he can make me emperor, he can make me Pope too. Go down this instant. I am emperor, and you are my husband. Will you be off at once? He was so frightened and went out, and he felt quite faint and trembled and shook, and his knees and legs began to give way under him. The wind was blowing fiercely across the land, and the clouds flying across the sky looked as gloomy as if it were night. The leaves were being blown from the trees. The water was foaming and seething and dashing upon the shore. And in the distance he saw the ships in great distress, dancing and tossing in the waves. Still, the sky was very blue in the middle, although at the sides it was angry red as in a great storm. He stood shuddering with anxiety and said, "What some prince but change ye be into a flounder in the sea? Come, for my wife Isabel wishes what I dare not tell." "What does she want now?" asked the flounder. "Alas," said the fisherman, "she, wants to be Pope." "Go home, then. She is already that," said the flounder. Then he went home, and when he came there he saw, as it were, a large church surrounded by palaces. He pushed his way through the people. The interior was in cloth of gold and was lit up with thousands and thousands of candles, and his wife was dressed in cloth of gold and was sitting on a much higher throne, and she wore 3 great golden crowns. Around her were numbers of church dignitaries, and on either side were standing 2 rows of tapers, the largest of them as tall as a steeple, the tiniest as tiny as a church tree candle. And the emperors and kings were on their knees before her and were kissing her foot. "Wife, wife, are you Pope now?" "Oh, yes, I am the Pope." He stood staring at her, and as if he were looking at the bright sun. When he had watched her from some time, he said, "Wife, let it be enough now that you're a Pope." But she sat as straight as a tree and did not move or bend at the least. He said again, "Wife, be content now that you're a Pope. You cannot become anything more." "We will think about that," said his wife. With these words, they went to bed. But the woman was not content. Her greed would not allow her to sleep, and she kept on thinking and thinking what she could still become. The fisherman slept well and soundly, for he had done a great deal that day. But his wife could not sleep at all. She turned and tossed from one side to another the whole night long and thought, till she could think no longer what more she could become. When the sun began to rise, and when she saw the red dawn, she went to the end of the bed and looked at it. And as she was watching the sun rise out of the window, she thought, "Ha! Could I not make the sun and man rise?" "Husband!" she said, poking him in the ribs with her elbows. "Wake up! Go down to the flounder! I will be a god!" The fisherman was still half asleep, yet he was so frightened that he fell out of the bed. He thought he had not heard right and opened his eyes wide and said, "Wife? What did you say, wife?" "Husband," she said, "if I cannot make the sun and man rise when I appear, I cannot rest. I shall never have a quiet moment till I make the sun and man rise." He looked at her in horror, and a shudder ran over him. "Go down at once! I will be a god!" "Wife," said the husband, falling on his knees before her, "the flounder cannot do that. Emperor and Pope he can make you, and I implore you, be content and remain Pope." Then she flew into a passion. Her hair hung wildly about her face, and she pushed him with her foot and screamed, "I am not contented, and I shall not be contented! Will you go?" So he hurried on his clothes as fast as possible and ran away as if he were mad. But the storm was raging so fiercely that he could scarcely stand. Houses and trees were being blown down, the mountains were being shaken, and pierces of rock were rolling in the sea. The sky was as black as ink, and it was thundering and lightning, very, very frightening. The sea was tossing about in great waves, as high as church towers and mountains, and each of them had a white crest of foam. He shouted, not able to hear his own voice. "Once a prince, be changed you me to a flounder in the sea. Come, for my wife Isabel wishes what I dare not tell." "Well, what does she want now?" asked the flounder. Unless she, wants to be a god." "Go home, then. She is sitting again in the hut." And there they are, still sitting to this day. Oh, boy, the voices were fun on that one. No, I will be Pope." Unlimited power. I really couldn't pass it up. It's going to be fun on the VODs. Little kids, here, listen to the story. Was Stream Palpatine yelling at the man? Oop. Oh. I think in my book I mentioned that this is one story that just goes to show that women can never be satisfied. Actually, I think this is in book 1. I have to look real quick. Dang it. Check. It's told by book 1. Did I read this story on here? Nope, the fisherman and his wife is not in this book. I think it's in book 2 then. Book 2. Yep, the fisherman and his wife is in my second book, the one that I'm editing right now. Okay. Unlimited power. I do have fun doing that voice in particular. In fact, on one of my old channels, I kind of partook in a bet on whether or not I would sing the song Dark Side as Palpatine. Of course I did. And I used animated avatars doing it then too. So technically I was VTubing over a decade ago. Of course, that was also on my Dell laptop using pretty much you could do your own videos using pictures, and then it would just animate the still picture into where it was speaking and do little voice movements. It was kind of fun to do. But now I only have 2 stories left in this book. And we have not even been going an hour yet, so it may be a short stream at this rate. Which I guess is fine. So, our third story for the evening. Okay, I need to get out of that voice. I'm certain we will be going into our third story for this wonderful Friday night of fairy tales. Oh, musicians. This will be an interesting one. Oh, is there going to be singing in this one? Yes, no singing in the story. Good. What? Okay. So our third story for this wonderful Friday night of fairy tales is the 3 musicians. Once upon a time, 3 musicians left their home and set out on their travels. They had all learnt music from the same master, and they determined to stick together to seek their fortune in the foreign lands. They wandered merrily from place to place and made quite a good living, and were much appreciated by everyone who heard them play. One evening, they came to a village where they delighted all the company with their beautiful music. At last, they ceased playing and began to eat and drink and listen to the talk that was going on around them. They heard all the gossip of the place, and many wonderful things were related and discussed. At last the conversation fell on a castle in the neighborhood, in which many strange and marvelous things were told. One person said that a hidden treasure was to be found there, another that the richest food was always to be had there, although the castle was uninhabited, and a third that an evil spirit dwelt within the walls, so terrible that anyone who forced his way into the castle came out of it more dead than alive. As soon as the 3 musicians were alone in their bedroom, they agreed to go and examine this mysterious castle, and, if possible, to find and carry away the hidden treasure. They determined, too, to make an attempt separately, one after the other, according to age, and they settled that a whole day was to be given in each adventure to try his luck. The fiddler was the first to set out on his ventures, and did so in the best spirits and full of courage. When he reached the castle, he found the outer gate open, quite as if it were expecting guests. But no sooner had he stepped across the entry than the heavy door behind him closed with a loud bang, and was bolted by with a huge iron bar, exactly as if the sentinel were doing his office and keeping watch. But no human being was to be seen anywhere. An awful terror overcame the fiddler, but it was hopeless to think of turning back or standing still, and the hopes of finding gold and other treasures gave him strength and courage to force his way further into the castle. Upstairs and downstairs he wandered, through lofty halls, splendid rooms, and lovely little boudoirs. Everything beautifully arranged, and all kept in the most perfect of order. But the silence of death reigned everywhere, and no living thing, not even a fly, was to be seen. Notwithstanding, the youth felt his spirits return to him when he entered the lower regions of the castle, For in the kitchens the most tempting and delicious food was spread out. The cellars were full of the most costly wine, and the storeroom crammed with pots of every sort of jam you can imagine. The cheerful fire was burning in the kitchen, before which a roast was being basted by unseen hands, and all kinds of vegetables and other dainty dishes were being prepared in like manner. Before the fiddler had time to think, he was ushered into a little room by invisible hands, and there a table was spread for him with all the delicious foods he had seen cooking in the kitchen. The youth first seized his fiddle and played a beautiful air on it, in which echoed through the silent halls, and then he fell to and began to eat a hearty meal. Before long, however, the door opened, and a tiny man stepped into the room, not much more than 3 feet high, dressed in a dressing gown, and with a small wrinkled face and a gray beard which reached down to the silver buckles of his shoes. And the little man sat down beside the fiddler and shared his meal. When they got to the game course, the fiddler handed the dwarf a knife and fork and begged him to help himself first, and then to pass the dish on. The little creature nodded, but helped himself so clumsily that he dropped a piece of meat he had carved on the floor. The good-natured fiddler bent down to pick it up, but in a twinkling of an eye the little man jumped on his back and beat him until it was black and blue all over his head and body. At last, when the fiddler was nearly dead, the little wretch left off and shoved the poor fellow out nearly dead out of the iron gate, which he had entered in such good spirits just a few hours ago. The fresh air revived him a little, and in a short time he was able to stagger with aching limbs back to the inn where his companions were staying. It was night when he reached the place, and the other 2 musicians were already fast asleep. The next morning they were much astonished at finding the fiddler in bed beside them, and overwhelmed him with questions, but their friend hid his back and face and answered them very shortly, saying, Go there yourselves and see what's to be seen. It's a ticklish matter, I can assure you. The second musician, who was the trumpeter, now made his way to the castle, and everything happened to him exactly as it had the fiddler, and he was just as hospitably obtained and forced, and then just as cruelly beaten and belabored, so that the next morning he too lay in his bed like a wounded hare, assuring his friends that the task of getting into the haunted castle was no enviable one. Notwithstanding the warning of his companions, the third musician, who played the flute, was still determined to try his luck, and, full of courage and daring, set out, resolved, if possible, to find and secure the hidden treasure. Fearlessly he wandered the whole castle, and as he roamed through the splendid empty apartments, he thought to himself, how nice it would be to live here always, especially with a full larder and a cellar at his disposal. The table was spread for him too, and when he had wandered about for some time, singing and playing the flute, he sat down as his companions had done, and prepared to enjoy the delicious food that was spread out in front of him. Then the little man with the beard entered as before, and seated himself beside the flute player, who wasn't the least startled by his appearance, but chatted away with him as if he had known him his whole life. But he didn't find his companion very communicative. At last they came to the game, and, as usual, the little man let his piece fall to the ground. The flute player was good-natured, just going to pick it up, when he perceived the little dwarf was in the act of springing on his back. Then he turned around sharply and seized the little creature by his beard, and gave him such a shaking that he tore his beard out. And the dwarf sank groaning to the ground. But as soon as the youth had the beard in his hands, he felt so strong that he was fit for anything, and he perceived all sorts of things in the castle that he had not noticed before. But, on the other hand, all strength seemed to have gone from the little man. He whined and sobbed out, "Oh, give me my beard again, and I will instruct you in all the magic arts that resides in the castle, and will help you carry off the hidden treasure, which will make you rich and happy forever." But the cunning flute player replied, "I will give you back your beard, but you first must help me as you have promised to do. You will do all that you have done so, and I won't let your beard out of my hands." Then the old man found himself obliged to fulfill his promise, though he had no intention of doing so, and had only desired to get his beard back. He made the youth follow him through dark, secret passages, underground vaults, and gray rocks, till they at last came to an open field which looked as if it belonged to a more beautiful world than ours. Then they came to a stream of rushing water, but the little man drew out a wand and touched the waves, whereupon the water parted and stood still, and the two crossed the river with dry feet. And how beautiful everything on the other side was. Lovely green paths leading through woods and fields covered with flowers, birds with gold and silver feathers singing in the trees, lovely butterflies, glittering beetles fluttered about and crawled everywhere, and dear little beasts hid in the bushes and hedges. The sky above them was not blue, but like rays of pure gold, and the stars looked twice their usual size, and far more brilliant than anything on our earth. The youth grew more and more astonished when the little gray man led him into a castle far bigger and much more splendid than the one they had left. Here, too, the deepest silence reigned. They wandered all through the castle and came at last to a room in the middle of which stood a bed, hung all around with heavy curtains. Over the bed hung a bird's cage, and the bird inside it was singing beautiful songs into a silent space. The little gray man lifted the curtains from the bed and beckoned the youth to approach. On the silk cushions embroidered with gold, a lovely maiden lay sleeping. She was as beautiful as an angel, with golden hair which fell in curls over her marble shoulders, and a diamond crown sparkled on her forehead. But a sleep as of death held her in its spell, and no noise seemed to awaken the sleeper. Then the little man turned to the wondering youth and said, "See, here is a sleeping child. She is a mighty princess. The splendid castle and this enchanted land are hers, but for hundreds of years she has slept in this magic sleep, and during all that time no human being has been able to find their way here. I alone have kept guard over her, and have gone daily to my own castle to get food and to beat the greedy old gold seekers who seek their way into my dwelling. I have watched over this princess carefully all these years, and saw that no stranger came near her. But all my magic power lay in my beard, and now that you have taken it away, I am helpless. I can no longer hold the beautiful princess in her enchanted sleep, but am forced to reveal my treasured secret to you. So set to work and do as I tell you. Take the bird which hangs over the princess's head, and which by its song sang her into this enchanted sleep, a song which it has had to continue forever. Take it and kill it, and cut its little heart out and burn it into a powder. Then put it into the princess's mouth. Then she will instantly awaken and bestow on you her heart and hand, her kingdom, her castle, and all of her treasures." The little dwarf paused, quite worn out, and the youth did not wait long to do his bidding. He did all he was told, carefully and promptly, and having cut the little bird's heart out and proceeded to make it into a powder. No sooner had he placed it in the princess's mouth than she opened her lovely eyes, and looking up into the happy youth's face, kissed him tenderly, thanked him for freeing her from her magic sleep, and promised to be his wife. At the same moment, a sound of thunder was heard all over the castle, and on all the staircases, and in every room sounds were to be heard. Then a troop of servants, male and female, flocked into the apartment where the happy couple sat, and after wishing the princess and her new bridegroom joy, they all dispersed over the castle to their different occupations. But the little gray dwarf now began to demand his beard again from the youth, for in his wicked heart he was determined to make an end of all their happiness. He knew that if only his beard were once more on his chin, he would be able to do what he liked with them all. But the clever flute player was quite a match for the little man in cunning, and said, All right, you needn't be afraid. You shall get your beard back before we part. But you must allow my bride and me to accompany you a bit on your way homeward. The dwarf could not refuse the request, and so they all went through the beautiful green paths and flowery meadows, and came at last to the river which flowed for miles around the princess's lands and formed the boundary of her kingdom. There was no bridge or ferryman to be seen anywhere, and it was impossible to get over to the other side, for the boldest swimmer would not have dared to brave the fierce current and roaring waters. Then the youth said to the dwarf, "Give me your wand in order that I may part the waves." And the dwarf was forced to do what he was told before the youth still kept his beard for him. But the wicked little creature chuckled with joy and thought to himself, "A fool, the youth will hand me my beard as soon as we have crossed the river, and then my powers will return, and I will seize my wand to prevent them both from returning to their beautiful country." But the wicked dwarf's intentions were doomed to disappointment. The happy youth struck the water with his wand, and the waves once parted and stood still, and the dwarf went on in front and crossed the stream. No sooner had he done so than the waters closed behind him, and the youth and his lovely bride stood safe on the other side. Then they threw his beard to the old man and crossed the river, but they kept the wand, so that the wicked dwarf would never again enter their kingdom. So the happy couple returned to their castle and lived there in peace and plenty forever after. But the other two musicians waited in vain for the return of their companion, and when he never came back, they said, "Oh, he's gone to play the flute," till the saying passed into a proverb, and was always said of anyone who set out to perform a task from which they never returned. I'd never heard that one before. So if you go away somewhere and don't come back, you just, he's playing the flute. Again, I'd never heard of that one before, but hey, it works. Yes, so will hydrate. I only have one story left in this book. How long is this story? Let's see. Nope. Hey, Talbot. Welcome in, Raiders. So I'm about to read the last story of this book. That's only 6 pages long. Dang. But finishing up the Green Fairy book, and I did it all without drinking any absinthe at all. So let's see, what are you doing? I love how this shout out program just like gives a general consensus of what you're doing. Why did it shout out Beano? What the hell? Okay, Spirit City Lo-Fi Sessions. Cool. I hope you had a good evening. Cool. A whole chapter? Dang. I would say how many pages, but, you know, chapters vary. A 1,000 words. Okay. That is definitely good work. definitely a lot of writing. So, you know, thank you for coming in for the raid, and bringing people. Oh, it's nice to have some more people around. Oh yeah. So I don't think I've even counted the words in my chapters. 3K a chapter is not bad. Especially as far as summarizing what takes place in it in dialogue. With mine, I tend to be overly descriptive and scene setting. I do a lot of exposition, so I'll have like a page of nothing but just setting a scene. I've been using the Google Documents for mine. That way I can also download it in whichever format I need afterwards. So. I don't think I keep a writing total. I just check the tools. Let's see. Check my biography real quick to see how many of them know. Okay. Tools. Word count. Oh, okay. Damn. My autobiography, at least that's what I'm calling it, is at. Oh, I'm going to turn on display word count. We're typing. I'm at 53,000. Oh yeah, it's usually better to not have fat paragraphs. But kind of like I do my fairy tale readings, I'll have a tendency to interrupt the story just for my own conversations. Yeah, well, I'm writing out my lore, so I'm writing it as a journal so far as a biography. I've been trying to get people to jump in to help illustrate it. Like my first, the fairy tale book I'm working on. Let's see, where's book 2? Okay. My fairy tale book that I'm only halfway through on is at 18,000 right now. Let me see, what's my first book? The book that I have printed already with everything else in it is 24,000. The book that's up on top of here, as told by, that's 24,000 word. And that's, I think I did 15 or 16 fairy tales in that one. I'm doing another, I think 16 in book 2. And then my biography is just pretty much my character lore. And I'm just now starting school in it. So it's going to be a longer. Well, the fairy tale books are more just editing and making them readable. Although I'm doing some of the translating too, so it's taking me a while. Because my German is not that great. I figured if I was going to do Brothers Grimm fairy tales, I could at least try to do my own translation. Since the untranslated is well beyond copyright protection, I can translate my own and just, do it myself. So it's taking me a while. That's almost been a year since I put the first one out. I feel like I did that one in a month. It's taken me 2 or 3 months on this one just because I'm dragging my feet. With my As Told by Books, I was going through my first couple of streams and just wrote down which stories I put on there. And then I'm just putting them in the book. So I am my own audiobook. Let's see. So story starts on. No, so that story's only 6 pages long. Dang, this won't take long. But yeah, everyone, if you need to take a break, go to the bathroom, get something to eat or drink, you can. Because, this story might take me maybe 20 minutes to read at the best. It's only 6 pages. If we're script type, that would maybe take me 10. And that didn't look to see how many illustrations there were. But after I finish this book, I guess next week I will go to the next in the Andrew Lang Fairy Tale Books series. So, yeah. So, again, thank you for the raid. Settle in for more stories if your people want to, or feel free to lurk because, well, that's what I do in those streams anyway. I lurk and then I read. So, I hope everyone will enjoy this last story for the evening. Because the last story for this wonderful Friday night of fairy tales: The Three Dogs. There was once a shepherd who had 2 children, a son and a daughter. When he was on his deathbed, he turned to them and said, "I have nothing to leave you but 3 sheep, a small house. Divide them between you as you like, but don't quarrel over them, whatever you do." When the shepherd was dead, the brother asked his sister which you would like best, the sheep or the house. And when she had chosen the house, he said, "Then I'll go and take the sheep and go out to seek my fortune in the wide world. I don't see why I shouldn't be as lucky as any other man who's set out on the same search, and it wasn't for nothing that I was born on a Sunday." Because superstitions. And so he started on his travels, driving his 3 sheep in front of him, and for a long time it seemed as if fortune didn't mean to favor him at all. One day he was sitting disconsolately on a crossroad when a man suddenly appeared before him with 3 black dogs, each one bigger than the other. "Hello, my fine fellow," said the man. "I see you have 3 fat sheep. I'll tell you what. If you will give them to me, I'll give you my 3 dogs." In spite of his sadness, the youth smiled and replied, "What would I do with your dogs? My sheep at least feed themselves, and I should have to find food for dogs." "My dogs are not like other dogs," said the stranger. "They will feed you instead of you them, and will make your fortune. The smallest one is called Salt, and will bring you food whenever you wish. The second one is called Pepper, and will tear anyone to pieces who offers to hurt you. And the great big strong one is called Mustard, and is so powerful that it will break iron or steel with his teeth." The shepherd at last let himself be persuaded, and gave the stranger his sheep. In order to test the truth of the statement about the dogs, he said at once, "Salt, I am hungry." And before the words were out of his mouth, the dog had disappeared, and returned in a few minutes with a large basket of the most delicious food. Then the youth congratulated himself on the bargain he had made, and continued his journey in the best of spirits. One day he met a carriage and pair, all draped in black. Even the horses were covered in black trappings, and the coachman was clothed in crape from top to toe. Inside the carriage sat a beautiful girl in a black dress, crying bitterly. The horses advanced slowly and mournfully, with their heads bent on the ground. "Coachman, what's the meaning of all this grief?" asked the shepherd. At first, the coachman wouldn't say anything, but when the youth pressed him, he told him that a huge dragon dwelt in the neighborhood and required yearly a sacrifice of a beautiful maiden. This year the lot had fallen on the king's daughter, and the whole country was filled with woe and lamentation in consequence. The shepherd felt very sorry for the lovely maiden and determined to follow the carriage. In a little it halted at the foot of a high mountain. The girl got out and walked slowly and sadly to meet her fate. The coachman perceived that the shepherd wished to follow her, and warned him not to do so if he valued his life. But the shepherd wouldn't listen to his advice. When they had climbed about halfway up the hill, they saw a terrible-looking monster with the body of a snake, and with huge wings and claws coming towards them, breathing forth flames of fire and preparing to seize its victim. Then the shepherd called, "Pepper, come to the rescue!" And the second dog set upon the dragon, and after a fierce struggle, it bit it so sharply in the neck that the monster rolled over, and in a few moments breathed its last. Then the dog ate up the whole body, except for its two front teeth, while the shepherd picked up and put those in his pocket. The princess was quite overcome with terror and joy, and fell fainting at the feet of her deliverer. When she recovered her consciousness, she begged the shepherd to return with her to her father, who would reward him richly. But the youth answered that he wanted to see something of the world, and that he would again return in 3 years, and nothing would make him change this resolve. The princess seated herself once more in her carriage, and, bidding each other farewell, she and the shepherd separated. She to return home, and he to see the world. But while the shepherd was driving over a bridge, the carriage suddenly stood still, and the coachman turned around to her and said, "Your deliverer is gone, and doesn't thank you for your gratitude. It would be nice of you to make a poor fellow happy, therefore you may tell your father that it was I who slew the dragon. And if you refuse, I will throw you into the river, and no one will be any the wiser, for they will think the dragon has devoured you." The maiden was in a dreadful state when she heard these words, but there was nothing for her to do but to swear that she would give out to the coachman as the deliverer, and to not divulge the secrets to anyone. So they returned to the capital, and everyone was delighted when they saw the princess had returned unharmed. But the black flags were all taken down from the palace towers, and gay-colored ones put up in their place. And the king embraced his daughter and her supposed rescuer with tears of joy, and returned to the coachman. He said, "You have not only saved the life of my child, but you have also freed the country of a terrible scourge. Therefore, it is only fitting that you should be richly rewarded. Therefore, my daughter for your wife. But she is still so young. Do not let the marriage be celebrated for another year." The coachman thanked the king for his graciousness, and was then led to be richly dressed and instructed in all the arts and graces that befitted his new position. But the poor princess wept bitterly, though she did not dare to confide her grief to anyone. When the year was over, she begged so hard for another year's respite that it was granted her. But this year also passed, and she threw herself at her father's feet and begged so piteously for one more year that the king's heart melted. and he yielded once again to her request, much to the princess's joy, for she knew that her real deliverer would appear at the end of the 3rd year. And so that year passed away like the other 2, and the wedding day was fixed. And all the people were prepared to feast and make merry. But on the wedding day it happened that a stranger came to the town with 3 black dogs. He asked what the meaning of all the feasting and fuss was, and they told him the king's daughter was just going to be married to the man who had slain the terrible dragon. The stranger at once denounced the coachman as a liar, but no one would listen to him, and he was seized and thrown into a cell with iron doors. While he was lying on a straw pallet, pondering mournfully on his fate, he thought he heard a low whining of his dogs outside. And then an idea dawned on him, so he called out as loudly as he could, "Mustard, come to my help!" And in a second he saw the paws of the biggest dog at the window of his cell, and before he could count to 2, the creature had bitten through the iron bars and stood beside him. Then they both let themselves out of the prison by the window, and the poor youth was free once more, though he felt very sad when he thought that another was to enjoy the reward that rightfully belonged to him. He felt hungry too, so he called his dog Salt and asked him to bring him some food. The faithful creature trotted off and soon returned with a table napkin full of the most delicious food, and the napkin itself was embroidered with a kingly crown. The king had just seated himself at the wedding feast with all his court when the dog appeared and licked the princess's hand in an appealing manner. With a joyful start, she recognized the beast and bound her own table napkin around its neck. Then she plucked up the courage and told her father the whole story. The king at once sent a servant to follow the dog, and in a short time the stranger was led into the king's presence. The former coachman grew as white as a sheet when he saw the shepherd, and, falling on his knees, begged for mercy and pardon. The princess recognized her deliverer at once, and did not need proof of the 2 dragon's teeth which he drew from his pocket. The coachman was thrown into a dark dungeon, and the shepherd took his place at the princess's side, and this time, you may be sure, she did not beg for the wedding to be put off. The couple lived for some time in great peace and happiness, when suddenly one day the former shepherd besought himself of his poor sister, and expressed a wish to see her again, and to let her share in his good fortune. So they sent a carriage to fetch her, and soon she arrived at the court, and found herself once more in her brother's arms. Then one of the dogs spoke and said, "Okay, who are you? How did you find me?" "Our task here is done. You have no more need of us. We only waited to see that you did not forget your sister and your prosperity." And with these words, the 3 dogs became 3 birds, and flew away into the heavens. Well, that was some interesting timing. Hey, Altered. I was just finishing up the story for the evening. I really like the Frosty Tools announcements when it does those. Why did it shout out Sam? What the hell? Oh. Friends are getting free shoutouts and they're not even here. So, how is Super Mario World? Oh, you were crowd control? That can be chaotic at times. Oh yeah. That just gives them a free ticket to be bullied. So what all does the crowd control do to Mario? Because I've seen it do things to other games. Oh, it didn't play the sound card. Dang. No, they were working. Oh, I didn't play that time. I've been working all this time today. Oh well. I guess that makes you my 335th. Cool. But yeah, I was actually finishing up. Was the last story in the Green Fairy book, so next week I will have a different fairy book to go. Yep. That is the third book in the colored fairy tale books. But yeah, I'm glad you came in anyway, because I don't get raids very often. I'm usually later than everyone else. Let's see. I'm glad you came in. I try to lurk occasionally. Okay, sound alerts. Why didn't that one go off either?
Welcome to Grey Wolf Rare and Magical Books.
Let's see if that's weird, because that's one of the sound alerts I actually recorded. Oh well. Let's see. Thank you, Exendrim. Cool name. Now let's see who was on that we might pass the love on to. Let's see, Dusk is working on one of our commissions. Who have I not rated for a while? Dun, 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 dun. Or if anyone has any raid suggestions, I'm glad to take those. You know, the haunting, creepy music. I need to change this to like the bookstore jazz one. I have to remember which one that is. Oh, hey, Oni. Oh, and a stretch. Okay, you can do that. Everyone's actually doing reading fun right now. Interesting to find another reader. Dun, 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 dun. Wait, what's going on? Okay, let's see what this one's doing.
That would be amazing.
I don't think I've ever heard space opera. My stream went pretty good. I just finished the Dream Fairy book and was looking to see who was online trade. I just finished the Dream Fairy book and went pretty good. Ah, damn it. Finished the Dream Fairy book and online trade. I hate that. I'm actually doing it with the desktop audio so I can hear the sound alerts, and I can't listen to anything else while I'm doing it, apparently. Because it just echoes back out. Let's see, I've got friends playing Overwatch, I've got people doing art. So if anyone has a raid suggestion, by all means, shout it out. Ouch. And in the meantime, I'll put this up. So I've got follower raid messages, I've got subscriber raid messages, but I think I may just read Dusk. Dusk is always fun to read, and she's doing art, so art is always nice. Or I could be really crazy and no, he's what's that? I heard Merriweather, but he looks like he's sleeping. So art it is. So I will say, where is it? Thank you everyone for coming in. Thank you for the raids, because it's awesome to get raids. I don't get them very often. And we will go. Oh, Puccina. Hey, Puccina. Which is strange. I think this is the second Puccina I've seen tonight. Anyway. Go ahead and read Dusk. Let's get that started. Again, thank you all for coming in, and we finished the Green Fairy book, so that means I will think it's Yellow Fairy books next. I will have to check my listings. So, I hope you all have a good night. And again, thank you for dropping by. And I will hopefully see you for the next one, which will be more of Sherlock Holmes's rivals. So, have a good night, everyone. And thank you for coming by.